Do you think that countries should be punished for decolonizing themselves? Because they are, in many, many different ways, in many, many different avenues. And I want to focus on one of them, which could cost Africa this year over $1 billion. It could cost Burkina Faso over $250 million just in one case, which I'm going to highlight later. Because the West will punish any country that tries to decolonize itself. And recently, across the quote-unquote racistly termed junta belt, multiple countries throughout West Africa in the Sahel, have freed themselves from French rule, specifically have kicked out the French rulers. And the system that's been set up to protect the capital, literally the capital, when we talk about capitalism, we are not being very abstract. The system that is set to protect foreign capital is called the Investor-State Dispute Settlement System. I might call it dispute resolution. That's not the name. It's ISDS. That's just a brain fart on my part. And so what I want to do today is set out why this is a problem, because it's often very rarely talked about, and it is what physically prevents lots of economic success from happening in decolonized Africa. I want to set out what it is, how it came about, its current implementation across the Sahel, right? And then I want y'all's thoughts. I'm going to walk through some case studies as to what's happening, and specifically one in Burkina Faso. And then I want y'all's help. I want you to tell me where the pressure points here are, if there are organizations working on it, etc. And I'm in my finance bro outfit right now. I'm in Patagonia, right? Like big up finance, right? At some point, this is going to come off. It's going to have a Liberty University tank top where we're going to go full lefty, problem bro. And you just have to wait, because then, the arms will come out and it'll be worth it. Even if you're not into international private law, I promise you'll learn something today. I promise you will come out with a better understanding of the imperial gears. Because anti-imperialism should be at the center of most Western leftist politics who are in the center of empire. But many of us, even who try to understand the empire or try to be anti-imperial visually, don't understand how the gears of empire work, what they are, where they are, and how you put sand in them. And we gotta know the enemy better than they know themselves, so we can hit them exactly where it hurts. And this is my start. It's not my end, and it won't be my end. And I actually don't think this is very unique. I'm sure someone is paying attention to this. I just can't find them. So please come along with me, as even if it gets a little dull, I promise you'll learn something. It's important, because at the end, you will understand better how to put sand in the gears of empire rather than oil. So, first of all, how does this work? What am I talking about, right? What is the thing? Basically, think about it like this. In the most simple case, country A, take Burkina Faso, wants to kick out French investors, right, which are French capitalists that came in and said, we're going to buy a bunch of land in exchange for a contract with Burkina Faso. We're going to pay a comparably de minimis amount to the government, right, and we're going to take all the resources from it. Let's say they were looking for something crazy like gold. And Burkina Faso, the country, prior to decolonization, wrote a treaty with France, and actually wrote a treaty with a lot of countries, which tied them to the World Bank, the ICSID, the International Center for Settlement of Investment Disputes, which basically said, we will respect international contracts that we sign. So say we respect that we will give access to these land rights in Burkina Faso for them to mine on. And then, the people take over the government and say, fuck that, we own our own gold, we'll extract it ourselves. French investors, get the fuck out. And then these French investors are annoyed, and they go, I'm really sad, right? And they can't sue in Burkina Faso courts, right? They can't say, this government, they're not going to use Burkina Faso courts, right? Because the Burkina Faso government now has control of their laws. So what they do is they first sue in Burkina Faso court, maybe. But then they go to an international tribunal, in this case, the ones that the World Bank set up. And they go, you broke your treaty that you signed. Now it's between France and Burkina Faso and all of the other bilateral treaties, which there are like 92 signatories of this treaty. And then the World Court rules against them and says, okay, these investors are right. They have the right to take these resources. And then they get damages. Say, for example, $240 million in damages. And you're going, well, okay, how do they enforce it? If Burkina Faso's government is in control of Burkina Faso, what are they going to do? Go and invade Burkina Faso? No, because we have a worldly economy. And the general rule is that we have free trade, right? The general rule for everyone in power is that if American assets, for example, are held by France, France can't just steal them, right? France can't pass a law and just steal France's assets. But if a international tribunal like this says, yeah, you did wrong, Burkina Faso, suddenly if Burkina Faso, for example, has weapons being held by the West or gold being held in a American account, or, for example, wants to use US dollars because that is the world's reserve currency to buy oil, and that's held in a foreign account, suddenly that foreign account is up for grabs. And if it's in a country like one of the 92 countries that are a part of this treaty, then those French investors can go to that country and say, hey, look, that's Burkina Faso. I think that's the exonym. I haven't checked. I'm so sorry. That's the Burkina Faso, like, assets. Those are the government. They owe me money. Just give me that money. It doesn't matter what else it's for. Just give me that money. And if they can't do that, France or these other countries could implement tariffs on the country, break kind of the rule of free trade, the rule of equitable tariffs, specifically to break down Burkina Faso industry as a punishment, right? And presumably get that money back in a trade imbalance. You see what this looks like? It's a punishment. It's a punishment for taking back your resources, right? It makes investors a bunch of money, right? It takes money out of African hands and puts them into Western investors. And specifically, it's the idea that we should like respect private property, but obviously colonization and forcing countries to enter into treaties they don't agree with doesn't respect it. So there's no moral argument. I'm not going to have the moral argument. It's not going to be had here. If you want to have the moral argument about whether ISDS should exist, fuck off, right? What's also important here, so that's kind of the structure here. And you're going, well, okay, how bad is that, right? If they entered into a treaty, surely the solution is just these countries stop entering into treaties that let other people do it. And you would be right. And there are other countries that have pulled out, right? Like Brazil and Venezuela and Cuba have pulled out of this. They've been punished for it, by the way. The illegal trade embargo on Cuba is a punishment in part for this. But what's important here is that oftentimes the way they were forced into these treaties to do bilateral arbitral tribunals, right, which is what they're called, is through coercion. It's through things like the IMF, where the IMF says, okay, your people are starving because corporations keep stealing from them, and maybe they're poisoning the water or something. I'm a Westerner. I don't care, right? So we'll give you a little bit of money for humanitarian aid so that you all don't get, diseases and die. And in exchange, you silly, silly Africans need to change your public policy, right? You need to change go into a private model because you simply are too dumb to figure out that socialism's better, right? So we're gonna make you go into austerity. And one of those changes often is that you must join the World Bank. So what they do is they give them money. Also, guys, I'm being sarcastic. Oh, the Westerners are evil. The Africans should be sovereign and they're very intelligent people. You get it. Okay. Anyway, the West comes in and says, we don't respect you as people, which is what they've always done. So we're going to tell you what to do. And one of those things they tell them to do is join the World Bank arbitration system. And so they bribe them and they coerce them. And then they install governments that will do what they want if they don't want to. That's why, for example, Nigeria has gone through 4 different governments in the past 20 years, or regimes, I should say. So that's what happens. They get coerced into this. And I think that summarizes the 5 points that I wanted to. This is a corporation suing a sovereign country, the enforcement mechanism stealing the country's resources that are outside of the country. Cool. It does not matter what the previous regime was, even if that previous regime was a treaty. So was signed the treaty. So for example, if a corrupt Burkina Faso government signed the treaty that doesn't represent the people, right, at all, right? It doesn't matter because legally they're the same as the revolutionary force that does represent the people. So what can happen is a colonial arm from, say, like a crazy world France comes in, installs a puppet government of France, and says, sign this treaty, and they're a puppet government, so they do. And then even if that puppet government gets taken down, they're still liable for what's under the treaty, right? And this came about in part by puppet governments, but in part also by large-scale coercion by the West to sign these treaties. And then the consequences of this is that sometimes they have to pay out. Sometimes Burkina Faso says, okay, we'll pay the damages either in these stolen goods that you'll take anyway, or we'll actually just pay as a government, and then we'll re-enter into negotiations. But other times they say, okay, look, we agree we have to let you mine. And so they do. And so they have to let foreign investors come in and steal their resources. And this comes in a bunch of different ways. And also, I don't want to summarize the whole system. There are a million ways you could address this, right? I don't want to do everything. But there are a lot of times where things like environmental treaties or environmental regulations are challenged on ISDS claims, being like, well, you said we could build the dam, and now you're saying it violates environmental regulations. Well, you have to pay us for the cost of the dam. Shit like that. They're changing public policy. Right? Like there are cases where they poison things because they get rid of the environmental regulations because they say it violates their private rights. So this is literally a company directly being able to blackmail a country into changing their public policy. So it's not only stealing from them, but it's also harming the people in some cases. Fifth, the hypocrisy. And this really stands out, and this really highlights what's actually happening. right, is there's no parallel structure like this for human rights. There is not a organization in the world that has 92 people, 92 countries. There are some regional human rights courts like this, maybe. But there's no tribunal in the world where I, as a person, can go, my freedom of speech was violated. Right, in Burkina Faso, for example. I get to sue Burkina Faso in international court. And even if they don't want to pay out, right, I get to steal their resources as reparations. No one can do that. But a company can say my private property rights, my contract rights, my tort rights were violated. I can steal their property foreign. The protection of private rights supersede massively public rights in international law. And this builds an alternative system. So there's hypocrisy. This is harmful. It violates sovereignty. I could go on and on and on about how this is bad. But that's ISDS. Tell me what you don't understand. I don't know how to explain. There's more that could be said, but I cited some things if you want to read more explicitly, both in a pro-ISDS and an anti-ISDS case. That's what they look like. But specifically, I wanted to talk about this because of the rise of AES, which is the Alliance of Sahel States. Right, which is what I recently referred to as the West, racistly referring to it as the Junta Belt, from Chad to Guinea most recently. And where African movements of various stripes, like I'm not going to endorse every single one of these movements, that's not my intention, but they are all better than France colonizing them. Ground rules, France shouldn't be doing this. And if you want a history of, I realized, like, if I'm going to talk about this region, I should reference. All of those were formerly colonized countries by France or formerly influenced by France. France never decolonized. France changed how it colonized, right? And that's important because really, for example, they still use a French, now pegged to the euro, currency. Their fiscal policy was determined by France. French troops were in these countries, quote unquote, protecting from terrorists, but not with the consent of the government for a very long time. So France was still colonizing these places. France was still owning these places. And for example, Niger, something like 60 to 70% of France's uranium comes from West Africa, right? France is not self-sufficient. France is still a colony. So there's this big belt that they're slurring in any way possible. There are a lot of ways that they've slurred them and attacked them for gaining independence. And in response, they've slurred them. They've done propaganda campaigns. That's why it's known as the Junta Belt, right? They've done physical skirmishes. French troops have just refused to leave at times, claiming that it was illegal or only left at the very end, right? But importantly and underreported, there is litigation going on in ISDS courts that could move millions of dollars of African funds and resources into the pockets of Western corporations. And this is what I want to talk about. ISDS is bad on the best days, right? But it's fucking disgusting in this case, right? Also, let me check my volume. Where's my volume at? Oh, my volume's all the way up. Okay, cool. So there are direct examples, but there are 5 cases that I looked at specifically, which is in Guinea, which was registered 7 days ago, right? Today's the 29th. This was registered 7 days ago because the quote-unquote junta, the revolution, happened a few months ago, which is Namibia Investments v. France, right? No, Namibia Investments, which is a French company, against the Republic of Guinea. There's one in Mali. Société des Mines de l'Eau. French is the only language that I'll actively butcher because I don't respect them. That's against Mali. That was filed in May. Niger, there was one which is effectively the French government, Orano Mining, SAS, and that was filed in March. And then there was another one, GovernX Niger Holdings and GovernX Uranium, a British and Canadian and Australian company versus Niger. Burkina Faso, which is the focus of this later one, which is Sarama Resources Ltd, a British, French, and Australian company. All of these are resource-based disputes. So some are uranium, some are mining generally, some are like real estate, all of which were levied by the Western or Western allied countries. And importantly, all of the ones I've highlighted are pending, right? So these are cases that have not yet been like won by the investors, meaning they have yet to be decided. And importantly, anyone that references this, not even based cool people like me, right, will recognize that political pressure in these cases matter. But they're fucking dull, right? They're dull. Like this, it's kind of boring to look at a mining company in Burkina Faso that is suing in international court of a really complicated private law matter on them violating a contract that violates a treaty that was signed 10 years ago, 20 years ago in this case. But it's important, right? And this is also a case, and what I'm going to get into later, is this is something where we can have a real impact because of how small some of these companies are and how big some of them are. So they're pending, which means we can actually have an impact, and this is where I need y'all's help later. The goal here, and let me be clear, is to prevent money from leaving the pockets of Africans and going into the pockets of Western imperialists. Stop stripping resources from Africa. If you disagree with that, the rest of this article is not for you, and I'm not fucking debating it. I don't care. If you think there is any world where a fucking French colonizer should be able to steal gold from Burkina Faso in the great year of 2025, you've lost your goddamn mind, and I don't want your help. So that's that. Okay. So what's to be done, right? That's hard to describe. These are complex systems, and capital moves very freely, right? It's Spivak. That's what it is. Spivak, my very good author, wrote Under Western Eyes on this issue, which is that as movements, as decolonial movements, we must be as flexible as the capital we are following. So, to kind of do a primer, here's a single case study, which is Samara Resources. I'm not going to go into all of them. I've spent a long time researching some of these and thinking about this generally. But I specifically want to highlight Samara Resources, right, which is the one that's suing Burkina Faso. Still pending, and they're suing for mining rights, especially to gold, which were contractually attained prior to the reclamation of national control. They're suing for $242 million in damages, along with the rights to mine for gold in the area upon completion, or i.e. completion of the contract. So they want the resources, and they're also claiming damages because they're assholes, right? So the 242, that's almost $250 million. So they want $250 million from a country that is, its net GDP last year was 20 billion, right? So they want roughly that's about 1% of their GDP just in damages, right? That's fucking insane. And the investing class, and they're actually a pretty small company, right? The company itself is worth about $20 million, give or take a few million. Depends where you look. I looked at different places. But what I want you to grok here is that the investors don't like conceptualize themselves as evil, and they're very open about what they're doing. Because they know, right, the investment pitch of Samara, right, is its fucking right to sue Burkina Faso. Samara Resources offers a compelling investment opportunity driven by a $242 million plus interest fully funded arbitration claim and 2 belt-scale gold projects encompassing Cosmo Newberry. So they've 2 other projects, and the number one thing on their investment portfolio, right, with investingnews.com, whatever, is fucking the claim. This right worth $250 million. So this is an economic prize to them. It's not some, vindicating their rights. It's not some strong country versus weak corporation. It is literally just an investment opportunity that they are selling off of. And it is worth 10 times more than this company's resources. That's fucking insane. I don't know if I can explain to you how fucking insane that is, right? But this fucking small company, which is 20 people, right? It's pretty small. It's mostly just searching for gold. They are suing a sovereign nation for 1% of their GDP. What the fuck? Right? That's insane to me. When targeting specific companies, I think there are kind of 2 modes of thought that, once again, I want y'all's opinion on. Either you go for big companies and you can do consumer boycotts on them, right? You can do InBev. I forgot. I'm no longer a finance bro. Although this is going to sound very finance bro-y, but I think if I say this in finance bro-y things, it's not going to go well. So, guys, it's time. It's time for the Liberty University tank top. Let's go. Podcast listeners, I'm so sorry. Okay. Liberty University tank top on, time to talk about some finances. So there are 2 ways I think about this, right? Either you go about things that can have a big consumer boycott, which tend to be bigger companies. That's why people boycott Coke. That's why people boycott Google. That's why people boycott Apple, right? But you're going to have a harder time having a large effect on them. And what we want them to do is just drop the case, right? It's a really easy ask. But you're probably not going to get that from Google. But you can actually have an app. But you can have the argument, right? Because how you do a boycott, and I want to explain this kind of fundamentally because I think there's a lot of discussions about consumer boycotts that don't make a whole lot of sense. The argument of a consumer boycott is that it is more profitable for them to stop doing the thing than for them to continue doing it because of the boycott. So, for example, if Spotify makes $5 million off of selling ICE ads, right? If we have a consumer boycott that is preventing them from getting $10 million of value, they're going to be okay, let's just and then the promise has to be we'll come back, we're going to give you these $10 million if you stop doing ICE ads. And you can do that with these smaller claims, right? If InBev is claiming, I think they're claiming against Nigeria, I don't remember. But if they're claiming something like $20 million from Nigeria, and we have an American-wide boycott of InBev products, right? Which, by the way, is a bunch of beers and a bunch of, it's InBev. It's the largest beverage company in the world, Food InBev. If you have a general strike against them for a month, it's going to cost them $20 million, right? And they're going to say, fuck, okay, let's just drop the case. It's easier. The issue, of course, is that then they see that it can be done all the time, right? And they say, okay, well, if we give it to this, then they're just going to do this every time. And ultimately, it's not worth as much. That's the idea. That's one way to think about it. Another one is you go after smaller companies, right, where you can have a larger proportional impact, right? They will see it. They will have to respond to you, right? If you can touch 5% of their thing, you can drop their fucking stock price. And specifically with Samara Resources, right? They are a publicly traded company, okay? So if you short a bunch of their fucking stuff, they're going to see it and they're going to ask why. And then you can get in their heads, right? The concern with smaller companies is that you are effectively on death ground, right? So if they say, well, it's never going to be profitable for us to drop this suit, because if we drop it, we just go bankrupt. Well, you can boycott them all you want. It's not in their interest ever to do it. I have some ideas, right? So that's kind of where I'm at. How do we think about this? How do we attack these, right? Because you want to think about how to engage with these people. And obviously, I can only advocate legal things. I'll leave that where it is at. Okay, so the legal things you can note is think about where their stocks are. Because the reason I looked at Samara specifically is it was one of the 5 I looked at, but also because it is, number one, not worth that fucking much. It's worth $20 million. Which means as the public, right, a slander campaign, not literally, not slander in the legally actionable sense, guys, can do a lot. And number two, it's publicly traded, right, which means that it's in ETFs, right? It's in a bunch of funds. It's in a bunch of different places. It's not privately traded. And also it means I'll go ahead and say, I think one thing I'm going to try to do, and if anyone has advice on this, please tell me, I want to get Wall Street Bets to short sell it. I think we can get Wall Street Bets to short sell it. If 1,000 of us, I have 130,000 followers. So if 1,000 of us go and start shit posting on Wall Street Bets that this is fucked and that we should get it sold, and them demanding to drop the case to short sell it, yeah, I think we could affect their stock price pretty easily, because they're publicly traded. That's what I think. Is that stock manipulation? Not if I don't profit off of it, right? My aim isn't to profit off of it. So that's a thought, guys. Let's flesh that one out. You know what I mean? And let me actually write that out. We could get Wall Street Bets to short sell it. You're seeing behind the curtains. Good work. So I did some research. This is where it starts, right? I want to kind of model out how I would think about moving these things. Is this research? So it's a publicly traded company, meaning that you know where the stocks are generally. Some of the major funds that hold it are a Swiss company called Conwave, a international company called Mackenzie, right? You have Nestor Gold Funds, and you have Mackenzie Part 2, right? Some institutions is some random fucking Swiss institution, Conwave again, and then IG Investment Management. Here's what gets really interesting is, for example, Mackenzie, right? If you think about what we want them to do is divest, right? It's a divestment campaign, for example, and say, I will divest until you drop the case. Let's say that's the demand. What you want to think about is, okay, where do we have pressure to do that? And if your city council is invested in Mackenzie ETFs, for example, you can go to city council and go, yeah, let's divest from this ETF, and send in as a divestment notice, hey, we are going, so you sell the ETF. ETF is just a fund of funds. So it's a fund that holds a bunch of different gold shares. And you go in, they go, I own, say, $1 million in this fund, right? I'm going to sell off my share unless you drop this one stock from the fund, right? Just divest from it. If enough people do that, you can get them to divest, right? Because it becomes, once again, more profitable for them to divest than to continue being invested. And specifically with Mackenzie, they have something like $1 million in this company. It's not much, right? I think it's maybe 200,000 if memory serves, right? It's not much. So if a little bit of pressure against their ETF to drop happens, you can get them to drop it. But specifically, the major owners, right, are listed. Once again, public company. So Andrew Dinning, right, is the CEO and founder of this. Jack Hamilton, he is a vice president, right? And then you have Paul Scheimed, I apologize, who owns 0.25% of this, right? But that's not actually that much money, right? At top, that CEO owns $500,000. The next one owns $200,000. And I found a video of the CEO talking about colonizing Burkina Faso. He was very pleased with himself in 2023. I don't think he's as pleased with himself now. He lives in Australia. I bet he has other investments that can be boycotted. So once again, it becomes less profitable for him to continue doing this than to not, right? He probably has positions of public trust that, for example, if he's on a board of a school, right? If he's on a board of another publicly traded company, any of those shareholders can go and yell at him. right? There are a lot of ways you can do pressure. It's in a public fund. You can try to get them to divest. The second largest shareholder, Jack Hamilton, he graduated from Queen's University and an undergraduate degree in the University of British Columbia, publicly available on his LinkedIn profile, which is also linked in my article. No, that's not in his LinkedIn profile. That's on Market Streamer, right? I wonder if statements from Queen's University or the Queen's University Student Organization or things condemning his actions and revoking alumni privileges might get his attention and maybe change his mind. And once again, make it personally less profitable for him to continue supporting it. Paul Scheiman also owns 0.5%, right? But he's high up in the exec of this company. He has a public LinkedIn. He's a public figure, allegedly. And he serves on another company called Colpio Minerals, which is looking to imperialize Chile and take their copper, right? Which recently caused a massive right-wing shift in Chile. He really might not appreciate the bad press because his company doesn't want bad press because they have other multi-million-dollar opportunities that they need the public side on. So checking if public funds like your local city council, pension fund, union fund, university fund are invested in the gold equities that hold this stock, to engage in your free speech right to call out these individuals engaged in neocolonialism, to finding out where you have sway holding positions of public or private trust, holding them to account for it, are all a bunch of ways that we can use public pressure that's pretty available, right, to make it less profitable to continue colonizing this particular African country than to do so and continue doing. Do you see how that works? You can make it less profitable to continue colonizing Africa than it is to actually continue stealing from them. And you can do that in a bunch of ways because people are fucking weak. And so this is where I need your help, right? I've kind of laid out some ideas, and there are some ideas I can't share publicly or advocate legally. And what I want your help in is, first of all, we're better when we're stronger when we're together. And what I want with this article is to kind of set out just a thought, right? How do we start going about disrupting this process of neo-imperialism? First I want to bring attention to it, but then attention needs to turn to action. How do we go from knowing about this to actually doing something about it and getting a fucking win? Because I want to fucking win. I want to win this shit. I want the case to drop, and we can do it, right? Like, I think we could do it if enough people got behind this and enough happened. If we take anti-imperialism fucking seriously, this is what it looks like in the 21st century. So that's what I want. And we're better when we're stronger together. And so I want to know, first of all, are there organizations that are already working on this? I don't give a fuck if you go steal this information. I have no propriety over this. Steal this information, go send it to everyone. I don't give a fuck. I don't own this struggle. I'm just noticing it. If there are organizations already working on it, please fucking tell me. I will contact them. I want to get talking with them. I can do research for them. It's okay. This could be Pan-Africanist organizations, diasporic communities. Are there diaspora communities from the Sahel that are thinking about this and care about people in that area that want to protect them from this type of neocolonialism, right? And it's especially helpful if there are organizations that are Australian or Canadian based. For example, what is the company I was looking at? Sarama Resources, that's Australian based. GovernX, which is the one suing Nigeria, is Canadian and Australian based. Or French. If there are French ones, let's talk. The French know how to protest, and if this gets implemented into French protests, I want to talk to you. So first of all, are there organizations working on this? Second of all, if any of the companies you have connections to the companies and you can tell me something helpful on boycotting them, please email it. Obviously, use your fucking discretion, right? Don't send me illegal shit. Don't break the law in a way that I could get in trouble for, right? But there's my email, willstalks@proton.me. Email me. I'll read it. And finally, I really fucking want to win. I think a lot of leftists don't fucking want to win. I want to win, guys. We need power. And this is a way we can actually use the power that we have in the fucking imperial core to change shit. Right. And I think we can get Sarama to drop the case. Like, that's in my heart. I think we can do it. I also think we might be able to get GovernX Niger Holdings to drop the case because they're a pretty small company too. And so that would be fucking amazing. And that would stop this type of neocolonialism in its tracks. And it would literally put millions of dollars of money back into the pockets of Africans and take it out of Western imperialists. Right? Instead of just a balance sheet getting higher for a Western imperial company, right? Africans would have more money to defend themselves with. So, any way you can help me win or connect with people that can help me win, or we can win. You go do this work, right? You go find people. You go organize stuff. Please, I'm not going to run this fucking movement. That's not my goal. That's not my aim. I don't want it to be a movement. I don't care. Whatever. I'm just saying something. Right? If you're a content creator, start talking about this. Steal this information. Build on it. If you do research and you find more, DM content creators about this. Share this and let them know, right? I want to see this fucking happen. And will I have the time and capacity to make it happen? No, but I think y'all do. So I swear, we are searching, and content creators are always looking for good content, and this is fucking good content, and it will be evergreen. So, and it can make a fucking difference. And we're always looking for content that is evergreen and can make a fucking difference, and this is the fucking jackpot. So that's where I run out of a script. I don't really want to run anyway. But I want your help. That's what I want. And I hope you learned something. And I'll give one more, because I think that'll be my caption. And also, if you're a sapphic woman, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Not for, like, your life. You're fucking great. But, like, for me being gay on Maine. Anyway, that's what I want to do. And I think we can do it. Comment down below if you had never heard of this before. Comment down below if you have ideas on how to put the gears in the system. And if you think I'm dumb, leave me alone. Leave me alone, please. I don't want to hear it, frankly. I just want to hear positive things. Not about everything. You can critique me, but I want to hear positive things about this. And, like, what more to do. Or point me to a case that we can actually kind of stop. Or, even better, point me to people in this country that are asking for solidarity mechanisms. I will listen to them, and we can follow. We, like, be guided by the natives. Yeah. So, that's what I want to do. And I think I've explained it fully. So follow me here. This will be on YouTube. Watch it on podcasts. I'll try and link my podcast link here so you can listen to it, like, on your way into work or something. But if you can help me out, that would be great. If you can help these people out, that would be great. If you can start thinking about actual anti-colonial movements like this, let's get moving. And frankly, if, like, 20 of you started shitposting on Wall Street Bets, I think we could fucking tank this fucking stock. I think we could do it. It's small. I think Wall Street Bets could destroy it. But just let me know. So Finance Bros, now's your time. Much love, everyone, and follow all the laws. I'm not really sure where the laws stand on this issue, so I'm not advocating anything illegal, and it's your responsibility to check the laws in your area to choose whether or not you want to follow them, and I'm not advocating you break them. Bye.